Let's get started. Okay, we can change the slide two slides forward. One more. We're done with that one. Okay, one more. And one more. That's it. Okay. Okay. I talked to you a great deal about the approach and how you have to use your intent from the being level. And yesterday, somebody came up and asked me a question, and they said, "Well, this being level, when I'm giving my intent to heal and to make the gingerbread cookie and all that kind of stuff, am I saying this like from my intellect? Am I just saying the words?" And my first reaction was, yeah, it's like that. So you just kind of think it. But the more I thought about it, it's really not like that. You're thinking from the being level. And this will be a little hard to describe it. We'll try to. Thinking at the being level. What is that? It's an intention, right? We're having an intention to heal, an intention to find the black from the white, the intention to put the light on the black and get rid of it. All this is intention. Your intention can be an intellectual intention. I want to do this. It's an intellectual intention. But there's also a being level intention. And if you say, or if you think that you're going to meet up with some friends later tonight and that it's going to be a really good time. I intend to have a really good time. That's not so much a verbal thing, it's a feeling. You feel like you're going to have a really good time. So a being level intention is more a feeling, an attitude. It's maybe even better. It's the way you feel about it. It's the way, it's not necessarily words. If you're going to meet friends, you don't intellectually say, I think I'm going to have a good time. You just feel like, it'll be fun. Right? You express it with language through the intellect, but the feeling is at the being level. Okay, so it's an attitude. It's an approach. It's the way it is. It's the knowing it. And we talked earlier about how the guys would have an easier time with the imagery and visualization than the ladies. Well, the ladies are going to have a much better time with thinking from the being level than the guys are. That's going to be a more difficult thing. And the right-brainers will have an easier time than the left-brainers. Okay, so a little story goes with this. And at Pear Labs, Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research, at Pear Labs, they found that everybody could bias these distributions of random numbers, but the men could bias them a little bit. The women could bias them a lot. They found that if they gave instructions, we want to bias this set of random numbers to the high side, and then they'd give them instructions to this set to the low side. The men always could get a little to the high side when it's supposed to be high side, and to the low side when it's supposed to be low side. They did what they intended to do. They just didn't but have a small effect. The ladies, when you told them to bias it to the high side, there's a 50-50 chance whether it was to the high side or the low side. They were just, it was like random. But they had these big effects. They were creating big biases, so it was clear what side it was on when you looked at the data, but it wasn't correlated at all with what it was they were intending, what they were supposed to be doing. Well, why is that? Well, why that is because if you think about it through the intellect, there's very little power in it. If you come from the being level with your intent, there's a lot more power in it. Ladies know what they're doing at the being level and why they're doing it much more easily than men do. Men tend to have it in the intellect. We tend to be more left brain, and we tend to be more trapped in our heads, if you will, more trapped with our intellects. And I know there's a lot of guys that when you say you got to think from your being level, they go, what? How do you do that? How do you think from your being level? But I think most of the ladies get that very easily. It's a feeling thing. It's a attitude. It's a knowing. You just know how that is. It's just this way, and it's not something that has to go through the intellect to be vetted as some kind of logical process. It just is that way, and it's a feeling. So that's how you think from the being level. It's a non-operative kind of thinking. You're not processing. You're not analyzing. You're not really operating on something. You're just expressing an idea. You see, so it's a non-operative thought process. But it can be a very powerful, very strong process, and that's the intent that you're trying to focus when you heal. It's this intent from inside. As much as you try to think about it and intellectually manipulate it, you're getting in the way of it. It's got to be an expression of you from the being level. I can look at that and I see these guys and they're going like, what does that mean? How am I going to do that? That's just impossible. But I think most of the girls figure that. Okay, I got that. I can intend from my, and people might say it's an intention from the heart as opposed to an intention from the mind. That may be a metaphor that a lot of people would use. It's heart energy, not mind, not mind energy. If you go to school and you go there with an attitude that I intend to be a serious student, when I get there, I'm really going to study and I'm going to do well here. I'm going to learn things. Well, you don't necessarily have to make that speech to yourself, put it in language, but you have that feeling, that sense of it inside of you that this is important and I'm going to do well here. Not an intellectual thought from the being level. A commitment even, you see, an attitude. Well, that's what we're talking about when I'm saying hold that intent. It's express that intent from your being level. Sorry guys, it's the best I can do. You'll just have to try that, Just have to try to figure out what that is, but it will come to you. The more you meditate, you see, the easier that will become. When you are that point, consciousness floating in the void, you're not an intellect. That I am is at the being level. It's just you as a person. Your core, your being exists. It's not an I am at the intellectual level. So the more you are in that state and interact in the larger conscious system, the more natural it's going to be able to have that inner voice, if you will, that inner intention. I call that, in some of the things I write, I talk about a little I intention and a lowercase intention with a little I, and that's kind of your intellectual intention. And then the capital I intention is this bigger picture intention that's from the core. But it is a more natural thing the more you experience. The more you meditate, the more you are in the non-physical. You will operate in the non-physical at that intentional level, at the being level, not so much at the intellectual level. That's why it's good to know what you're going to do before you go there. Work that all out ahead of time, because otherwise you're there and what you really wanted to do was remote view a particular target, but for some reason you just don't think of that. It's because you're not really operating with this intellect. You're operating at this level, and this level doesn't do analysis, doesn't sit down and say, well, now, what do I want to do next? Let's see, here are my options, and I think it doesn't work that way here. Here's more of an attitude. All right, next slide. Typical reasons why you might have problems. And you'll see some of those we've already talked about. That, try to find point consciousness first. Well, when I give you 3 minutes, to do that, that's a little problematical, isn't it? Unless you've been doing this a long time. It may take a while to do that. So we're not really getting to that point where we've really let everything go first. So that gives us a little bit of noise in our system. But we can still function, we can still do that, and we can still be successful with a little noise in our system. It's just a signal to noise problem. And you can be successful even if you have a lot of noise and a pretty good signal. That works. You're more powerful. You can have a bigger effect if you have that same pretty good signal but a lot less noise. It means you have a lot bigger signal relative to the noise. So we still can function pretty well without actually going to point consciousness. So don't let that put you off. Don't think, well, I'm not getting to point consciousness, I can't do it, I might as well quit. You still can function there, and you'll learn to get there slowly later on. And hold that intent. You know, that was something I kept saying to you, and now maybe you know a little bit more about that. That's something that's a little difficult to do unless you practice. Hold that intent at the being level. Hold that attitude, hold that feeling, hold that intention. From the core of your being is where that intention is. Fear, of course, is always a problem. That fear of being wrong, not being able to do it. As soon as you get something, a fear will jump in that you got the wrong thing, or that it doesn't make any sense, that it couldn't possibly be right, that sort of thing. And all that just gets in the way. But that's all of your intellect. And you have to remain detached. You have to be a detached observer. You can't be attached to getting it right. You can't be attached to anything. You just have to be completely detached. All right, so that's being a detached observer takes practice, like being a good listener. It takes practice. Similar skills. All right, let's go one more. And we're going to have 11 exercises. And this time we're going to do a lot of diagnosing. We're going to do 6 diagnoses, but I'm not going to run you through a process. I'm going to let you do it with what you've learned so far. You can practice. I showed you a whole bunch of tools, some of which you've probably found useful and some of which you've probably found silly, but just use whatever comes to you. Use colors if you want, make up your own colors, experiment, do what you want to do, but I wanted to give you a chance to just try it on your own, with your own, your own process, without being led step by step what to do next. So you know you're going to have to come up with a metaphor for the body. You're going to have to come up with a metaphor for good versus bad in the health. You're going to have to come up if you want to know right from left, you're going to have to turn your body around and look at it, sometimes in the front, sometimes the side, sometimes in the back to see whether things are on the right or the left. So there's some of these things you're going to have to do. You've been through it 4 times, I guess. We did 2 on Friday, 2 on Saturday. So we've run through it 4 times. You can go forward and backward in time if you wish. So just relax. It's easy. I wanted you to do this on your own so that when we have Q&A, you'll be able to, if it didn't work out right, or if you got into a problem or something, that you'll be able to ask questions about it. So this will give you an opportunity to do it on your own and ask questions if you have problems before you have to go out and do it on your own, tomorrow and the next day and the week after that. So that's why I wanted to do that. So we're going to have 6 of those diagnoses and healings. And I'll give you probably more time than you need, because I'm going to give you time to experiment, try different things, different tools if you like. So I'll give you a little more time. If you feel like you're done and you just don't have anything else that you want to do, well then just float there. Just float in a meditation state for a while until we move on to the next one. I'm going to give you a terrible amount of time, but I'll probably give you, 4 or 5 minutes for each one. Before I was running through them step, 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 and now we'll just let you be more efficient than I was. You can go through your own steps and you can move forward as soon as you're ready, and then you can just float when you're not. Then we're going to do 4 remote viewing exercises, and then I'm going to give you 1 more personal choice exercise where you can go do what you want. Think about that before you go. What is it that you might want to do? Get that in your mind now, because otherwise when you're sitting there mostly aware at the being level, it'll be harder to think about what it is you want to do. And if you then start thinking about it, it'll pull you out of the being level, put you into the intellectual level, which won't be as productive. So think about what you might do with your personal choice event. Okay. And for those who are going to watch this in the decades to come on video, for those watching the video, intend that you are looking at these people and remote viewing objects as they were on May 31st, 2015. Your efforts to diagnose and heal will still be applied to generally promote their better health. Whether the remote viewing test objects still exist or not makes no difference. You will see them as they were on May 31, 2015. All right, take a deep breath, get your papers ready, relax. And what I will do is tell you to, each time I give you about 5 minutes, and then I'll name the next experiment. So the first one I'll tell you is experiment 12, and then I'll let you go. I'll give you the time. Then after, say, 5 minutes, I will tell you come back, write down what you see, and then I'll give you probably a minute to do that or so, and I'll tell you to return, and then we'll start experiment 13. That's how we'll do it until we go through experiment 17. This will be the last one, so you'll know where we are in the line. We're going to go from 12 through 17 in these experiments. All right? Relax. Right, experiment 12. Experiment 12, heal, diagnose and heal, Al S. Diagnose and heal, Al S. Okay, without losing your altered state, open your eyes and write down or draw what you saw. Then immediately return to floating in the void. Next will be experiment 13. Diagnose and heal Marie-Odile C. Diagnose and heal Marie-Odile C. Without losing your altered state, open your eyes and write down or draw what you saw. Then immediately return to float in the void. Next, we will do experiment 14. Diagnose and heal Lillian Elena B. Diagnose and heal Lillian Elena B. Without losing your altered state, open your eyes and write down or draw what you saw. Then immediately return to float in the void. Next is experiment 15. Diagnose and heal Philippe B. Diagnose and then heal Philippe B. Without losing your altered state, open your eyes and write down or draw what you saw. Then immediately return to float in the void. Next is experiment 16. Diagnose and heal Sylvie P. Diagnose and heal Sylvie P. Without losing your altered state, open your eyes and write down or draw what you saw. Then immediately return to float in the void. Next is experiment 17. Diagnose and heal Pierre B. Diagnose and heal Pierre B. Without losing your altered state, open your eyes and write down or draw what you saw. Then immediately return to float in the void. Next is experiment 18. I have taken a picture of a particular object for experiment 18. Intend to have an image of that object put on a screen or monitor in front of you to look at. Remember what you see. Now put that result aside, with no expectations of what you might see. Watch me taking the picture of this object. Now put that result aside. With no expectations of what you might see, watch me showing you a slide of this object at the end of today's experiments. Without losing your altered state, open your eyes and write down or draw what you saw each time. Then immediately return to float in the void. Next is experiment 19. I have taken a picture of a particular object for experiment 19. Intend to have an image of that object put on a screen or monitor in front of you. Remember what you see. Now put that result aside, and with no expectation of what you might see, watch me taking the picture of this object. Now put that result aside. With no expectation of what you might see, watch me showing you a slide of this object at the end of today's experiments. Without losing your altered state, open your eyes and write down or draw what you saw each time. Then immediately return to float to the void. Next is experiment 20. I have taken a picture of a particular object for experiment 20. Intend to have an image of that object put on a screen or monitor in front of you to see. Remember what you see. Now put that result aside. With no expectations of what you might see, watch me taking the picture of this object. Now put that result aside. With no expectations of what you might see, watch me showing you a slide of this object at the end of today's experiment. Without losing your altered state, open your eyes and write down or draw what you saw each time, then immediately return to float in the void. The next experiment is experiment 21. I have taken a picture of a particular object for experiment 21. Intend to have an image of that object put on a screen or monitor in front of you. Remember what you see. Now put that result aside, with no expectations of what you might see. Watch me taking a picture of this object. Now put that result aside, and with no expectations of what you might see, watch me showing you a slide of this object at the end of today's experiments. Without losing your altered state, open your eyes and write down or draw what you saw each time, then immediately return to floating in the void. Open your eyes and let the experience go. Slowly and gradually re-embrace the physical world. After you have fully returned, write down any notes on any of the experiences you might wish to remember, or any comments or any questions that may have come up. Okay, the truth data, experiment 12, Al S. had colon cancer, or has colon cancer. Al S., number 12, has colon cancer. So that would have been in the abdomen region. Experiment 13, Mariodial C has lung cancer on the lower left lobe, was recently removed by surgery. So at least you would see the healing necessary after a surgery, and probably you would see some cancer cells still in that vicinity. Experiment 14, Lillian Elena B has osteoarthritis. Mostly her pain and trouble is with her two thumbs and with her knees. Experiment 15, Philippe B has multiple sclerosis. It's a nervous system disease. Paraplegia. He's completely lost all sensation from the waist down. So that would be in the nervous system. Experiment 16, Sylvie P has Crohn's disease. That's inflammation of the bowel, specifically an area of about 20 centimeters around the ileum, which is the final and longest segment of the small intestine. So it's right at the end of the small intestine, which would be mid-belly. And Pierre B has problems with both arthritis and his nervous system, particularly in his lumbar, that's lower back, and his legs. He can barely walk because of this. Okay. For the truth of experiment 18, press the slide forward. For the experiment 19, next slide. For experiment 20, and for experiment 21. Right. Okay, so the next slide should be they'll pay? Really? The next slide should be a 15-minute break, so everybody can get up and walk around a little bit. I don't know what about the bale ahead. All right, take a 15-minute break. We come back after this break, and it's question time.